Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 106 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. So today's episode doesn't really need much of an introduction. It is a live stream recording that Gwen and I just finished yesterday afternoon. Today's topic is support. And who do I feel better around? So who makes me feel like I get more energy when I'm with them? And who do I feel like can maybe even suck the energy out of me? So we talk about really how to get support from our family and loved ones and turning to really unexpected people to get that support. Gwen and I really would like to continue using this format, and really I think for all of our future podcast episodes together, we are going to do them as a live stream first and then publish them within a day or two on the actual podcast. So the next one of these we're going to do right before the holidays. So this is going to be done on Tuesday, November 16th, and it will be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, just so we can get it a little bit later in some of those other time zones. So feel free to watch us live on the Always Andy's Mom YouTube channel, the Always Andy's Mom Facebook page, and we're also going to put it on the Your Grief Guide Facebook page. So that's Grief-Guide is the name of Gwen's Facebook page. So it will be able to be seen on all three of those platforms. And we are really excited to be able to talk about getting ready for the holidays and just how we can kind of get through that. We did another episode on this way in the past, but that was 2 years ago. So really it needs to be revisited again. Plus to be able to have some ability to answer questions will be great. And then one more announcement I want to make today is that I was recently interviewed on a podcast, and it was just released yesterday. The organization is called Spiritual Care Consultants, and it really focuses on balancing your mind, body, and spirit. The podcast itself is called the Healing Begins Podcast. So you can find me on episode number 55. I also do another one later on. I don't know if that'll be released next week or at a little bit later time, but be sure to listen to that Healing Begins podcast if you want to just to hear a little more about me. Gwen and I are here live. So this is the Always Andy's Mom podcast. And we are here today to talk to all of you a little so we can get a little more instantaneous feedback. So we'll see if people kind of get on and start watching and have something to add. And then this, of course, will be just aired as a normal podcast tomorrow, Thursday, at our regular time. So people can just certainly feel like they aren't going to be behind if they didn't watch it live with us.
Oh, that's good.
So thank you so much, Gwen, for agreeing to come on again. You know, I just love talking to you and about different topics. And I was so excited to hear your idea for a topic today to talk about support and who do we feel good around? That who makes us feel better? I just love the way you put that.
Yeah, it was something, Marcy, that we had written down a long time ago. So I keep a file of ideas for the podcast, and it was an old one. And that was the words I wrote down. Who do I feel better around with the question mark? So obviously it was a conversation we had.
I know, definitely so. And what's really funny is now I'm trying to look this up because I had someone send me an article just recently. I'll see if I can find it. Okay. And again, it talked about there are 5 different types of people in your life as a grieving person. and you wanted to be category 4 or 5. Those are the people that you want to be around. So I'm going to find that. I meant to have that ready and I forgot, just to be able to bring that up too at some point in time, because I thought it was a really amazing thing.
Well, that is part of, I don't know what the 5 are for you, but, definitely to talk about what type of people, what you're expecting from people, and maybe they're not the people that can give that. I don't know if you want me to dive right in, but I mean,
go ahead.
To expect your doer to be your listener, or expect your listener to be your doer is, not a good idea. So we kind of categorize people to say, this is a person I can go to help me with the housework or, with meals or whatever it is. But then other people are the people that we can go to for listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes then we have maybe someone who's our spiritual care person, or, we go to with those kinds of questions. And so we kind of do categorize people, but as bereaved people, we don't want to get confused and have expectations of someone when we're not putting them in the right category.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. And there are some people that are able to help us and able to give so much to us, and we can just draw support from them. And then others that just don't have that to give. And yeah. And so certainly we feel disappointed in some people and, pleasantly surprised by others, but
right.
Yeah.
Correct. Most of the time I find that we are mostly disappointed in our close circle, and we are pleasantly surprised by our greater circle of someone who steps in a way that we never dreamt possible. Or what I find oftentimes is our greatest support becomes people that we never knew.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's those people walking the road with you, or are ahead of you. So maybe you met them in a support group or on a Facebook page or something, because I remember a man saying to me, can you come over today? I want to talk to you about support group. And I said, sure. He had been going quite a while after his wife died. And when I got there, he said, I have to ask questions. Is this weird? I said, what's that? And he said, I feel closer to that group than I do my own children. And he just needed to know he really thought something was wrong with him. And really, he shared with them at a level that he didn't share with his daughters. And they were there for him in a way his daughters weren't, because of their stage of life and where they were geographically.
Well, and the fact that they're grieving too, that same person, it can be sometimes hard within a family to be the one, right? To be the one.
Exactly. So we do, and that pain of having people let us down and support is tough. And that's why, I do a weekly video vlog or whatever it is, just a few minutes of, I call it weekly wisdom. And last week I said, we have to be brave to tell someone else who we really are. But sometimes when we do that, we do get disappointed in their reaction and their lack of support. And sadly enough, it comes back to the bereaved person having to teach someone, this is what I need from you, or this is what hurts, or this is, how many times, Marcy, did you say to someone, I'm not asking you to fix this. I just need to say what I'm feeling.
Oh, absolutely. And then sometimes, I just think of my own family and some people that did want to try to fix it, and it ended up just kind of being a turnoff. And like, I didn't even want to talk to them anymore because it felt like it was too much to say. To say that. I mean, you have to be brave to say that, especially to a parent or a really close relative. Like, don't try to fix me. Just be okay being here with me in the sadness. It's hard.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Did you actually have questions today, or do you want us just to keep talking, or we wait and see if we have questions?
Yeah, we'll just wait and see if we have questions. We have a few people watching, so certainly if you all who are watching have some questions, feel free to pop in with them. But otherwise, I think we'll just kind of go ahead.
Yeah. Well, one of the thoughts that I had recently when training people how to be there for bereaved people is the thought, and this this stuff that I'm going to share right now comes from Zig Ziglar. I mean, he was an influential leader and inspired people to be better. One of the things that he said is that reactions are usually negative. And what happens when we display our grief to someone who hasn't walked that road, they react. And oftentimes their reactions, now this part's Gwen, the Zig Ziglar part was the reaction part. But oftentimes their reaction is two things. It is fear, complete fear of what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do something, and then a sense of almost just inadequacy. Like, I'm not the person. I was recently in a small group of women, and a woman that we did not know came, and she was, her husband had died, and she was crying. And the woman between me and the griever was immobilized in fear. I mean, her eyes, she couldn't even look at the bereaved person. I watched her and there's a part of, thank God, the experts here, right, in this circle with us.
Right.
So there's part of that dumping it on me. But totally immobilized in fear and feeling like I don't know what to say. So they feel fearful and inadequate, not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when people turn away from us and don't respond in a supportive way, it is truly their gut reaction that says, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot. And it does feel hurtful when your close friends do that. But so often they just really aren't equipped and just don't have the tools and don't know what to do. And so they just kind of hit this panic. And so.
Well, and how many times have you had to go to a funeral or had that conversation with yourself of, I know I should go, but I don't want to. Why we don't want to is because it's putting us right in an uncomfortable spot, like right there, that we are going to be face to face with somebody else's pain. And I've never met anyone who doesn't have that little bit of, I'd really rather not go here today or do this, right? It's just that natural reaction. But back to Zig Ziglar, what he says is that reactions are usually negative, but responses are usually positive. So there's a subtle difference, he said, but an important shift in going from when someone is hurting, I've got to overcome my reaction of fear and inadequacy or whatever it is, and respond. But he said the difference is that in responding, you're prepared in advance to how you're going to respond. And then this takes me to my argument of why bereaved people, can't find support, is we have not prepared in advance how to respond.
Of course not.
No. But I thought about it today in the shower, and as I was getting ready, like, I remember I had to go back to 11th grade year psych class. And I remember them teaching us about marriage and communication and money and family vacations and just things that, where you put your time. I mean, I remember learning a lot of different things because obviously at that point I probably had an interest in all this helping people stuff. I thought they never taught us how to deal with distress, pain, difficulties in life. We were not prepared.
And I don't think it's gotten better.
No.
I mean, not at all.
No. And that's why that's one of my big things is how do I go out forward in front and train teachers and churches and care ministry teams and people to say, you're going to need this, because when it happens, we don't want to respond or react. We want to have a response.
Yeah. And feel ready.
Yeah. So again, if we as the bereaved person can look at the person approaching us and realize that, when they turn away, that's just their gut reaction. But have you ever had anyone, Marcy, after they reacted poorly to you, come back and say, wow, I'm sorry I didn't engage more or talk to you about it?
Yeah, and I just very recently had someone apologize just for kind of pushing a little bit too hard in some ways too, because people don't know what to do. So I'm in a Bible study now, and right now, because of weird things with me having to carpool and things like that, I was doing it remotely, and it came up. Just there was a question, and I brought up the fact that that a certain the Bible reading had reminded me that God is always with me. And I said, even sometimes when I feel alone and I feel like God's abandoned me, because I think as a bereaved person, especially someone who's lost their kids, you can feel abandoned and alone. And I said it was just a good reminder to know that God's with me. And I started to cry. And everyone in my little virtual group started to sort of panic. And then the leaders then we get to the very end, and people were putting in prayer requests, and she's like, we should put in a prayer request for Marcy, basically because I'm not doing well, right? Because like I'm 3 years out and I still was crying over my son. So that means I must be kind of screwed up and need to go on a prayer list. And it really just threw me for a loop, because that didn't seem that crazy of a response to me, that I got teary, because I still miss Andy, and it was a powerful moment for me. And it doesn't mean that I actually needed to be on the extra prayer list. It was fine. What do you say then? No. Right. So I was like, okay. But she did then apologize later. And I said, well, it did feel a little awkward. And so much of it is that everyone got panicked.
Right.
And and I really didn't need them to get panicked at all. It was me just saying a beautiful thing about not feeling alone.
Right? Yeah.
But it's hard because people just don't know what to do.
Right. And then that's where we learned this mechanism of, then I have to stuff my emotions, because if they're out there, then people don't respond or react in a way.
Or they get panicked and now want to put you on a special prayer list because you're definitely messed up compared to everyone else.
Right. Exactly. And so I know sometimes we do have to hide a feeling to protect ourselves from someone who isn't a good support or isn't. But what we don't want is for that to become our coping mechanism, that we're always stuffing it in fear of other people's reactions. Or the reality is that people have reacted poorly. And so it's the value. What we want to teach our listeners today is finding the place where you don't have to stuff that, where your coping mechanism is not, I have to be fine, but I can let this out.
Right. Or if I would say something like that, if the response back had been, wow, that's beautiful that you can think of it that way, because that's really what I meant by it. But there was just such this overwhelming kind of panic in the group that somebody's starting to cry. And just not being okay with showing a little bit of emotion.
Right. Yes. Oh, I see that all too much, and just not being comfortable in that space to say that's a beautiful thing, even though it's hard. Thank you for sharing that. And just letting it be.
And letting it be. And not coming back around to it later.
Yeah. And putting you on a special list. That's
yeah, I know. And then I got the email that I'm on the top of the prayer list now. Like, oh, shoot. I don't really want to be on the top of the prayer list.
Yeah. Who's going to turn around special prayer or extra prayers? But it's like, put me on just for added peace and comfort or bravery or something, but not for what it feels like you're on there for. Right. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well, yeah, it's just, and then when I said about picking people that you have to be around, from taking my guided tours, one of the things I talk about is there are just some people who aren't good to be around when you're grieving.
Yeah.
Like, they're not good. And that's kind of what that question was. Who do I feel good around? If someone is sucking the life out of you, you got to stay away, because you really don't have a lot to give.
And I think that's what I actually wrote up in the little description of this, is that same thing on someone that's sucking life out of you. It's something that makes you feel more filled up, and someone who makes you feel more drained at the end.
Yeah. And what we know, the basics of communication is someone who enhances you and makes you feel full is someone who allows you to be. I mean, they say statements like I just said, thank you for sharing that. That was really, I could see that was hard for you, but very beautiful. Or it comes from a hard place, but, thank you for sharing that. Or even though I haven't walked that road, just you introducing me a little bit to your pain today, I consider a privilege. And, people who enhance us make us feel better because they don't shame us. People who withdraw from us and take away are the ones who say, well, first of all, you should be on a special list, but, like, well, why do you feel that way? Or, you know what your problem is, or why don't you just, What's interesting is sometimes people actually go to a counselor, someone they pay, and they get back, well, you know what you should just do is, you should just get a dog so then you're not so lonely. Or,
I have heard some not great things coming from therapists and all this time talking to different moms. And I'll have to, and I called them out on it, usually telling the person, like, that was not a good thing that your therapist said. Absolutely not. And we need to just throw that one out the window. And there may be 15 other great things your therapist said, and we can hang on to those. But if they went way off base, they just did,
Yeah. And again,
recently someone talking about, oh, God needed your son in heaven. And you kind of think one of those types of things, like so much good's going to come of it, more from him being gone than like, oh, please just pretend like that didn't even come out of her mouth. I know it came from a nice place in her heart, but it's just not helpful.
Right. But oftentimes what that is that's a solution-based response that, I'm giving you a solution here that maybe, wow, better things are going to come with him being gone than alive. There is no solution to this. This is not a solution-based kind of thing. It is a sit in the pain with me kind of place.
And that's why we've been talking about how we hope to be able to kind of help spread this message to healthcare providers in the near future. So Gwen and I are working on a little project for that. Just again, because when you're in the healthcare field, you do feel this need, like you're supposed to try to fix them and try to fix things and make things better. And just having that acceptance that in grief, it's not about making things better. It's about sitting with them as they work through it on their own. Because certainly things won't be this bad forever. And I know that over time, the pain slowly does get better. And I felt that over the last 3 years myself. But it's not because someone else made it happen or because of something someone else told me. It's me getting there. And it's me navigating all the different emotions and all the different feelings. And the people that try to solve the problem for me are not the people I want to be around because they are trying to push you to go way too fast.
Right. Yeah. And in a direction that isn't always healthy. And it's not, and what I love about what you said is it's the work of grief that you've done, that it requires, that you sit in it and be with it and emote and have that. That's the way to healing. But what I fear for is people who really feel they have no one, and I've met them in my career, that they really don't have any support. Sometimes it's a family structure. There are just some families who use humor, they're always, it's about a party. And I'm not against alcohol or partying or anything, but it's like, when I go with my family, they don't want the fun not to be there. Right. And so that feels unsupportive to someone who's hurting. Like, in order to be in my family, I have to be in this mode. Some families, we don't let anything bad in. We don't
Okay.
bring. Yeah. And so they really feel alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, we had a little bit of technical difficulty there for a second.
Okay.
I lost you, and I think my internet went out. So I apologize
Yeah.
for that
There was just a little
pause, but
bleep
I
I
think we're
saw.
okay. But I think we're okay now. I do want to bring in a question that someone has written in.
Okay.
I'll just read the whole little thing.
Mhm.
I often find myself not reaching out to my closest friends or sharing my grief with them, closest family, excuse me, or sharing my grief with them because often I feel like they can't relate, or at the end of the day, they just don't understand.
Mhm.
I often are, I'm afraid they're going to say something, they're going to say the wrong thing. At the same time, I don't want them to think that everything's okay because I don't talk about them. Do you have
Mhm.
suggestions of how I can share my grief with those close family members without putting the burden on myself or causing extra pain? It's a great question.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
is. And the hard part of the answer is without putting the burden on yourself, because really it's hard because it does require us to do a little bit of that work in,
Teaching.
teaching. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. There is a handout that if they email, and I'll send it to you, Marcy, that I use. It was on a website called Grow, GROWW. But it
Okay.
says how you can really help me. And it answers some of those questions. And I give it to bereaved people and say, give this to some of the people in your life and say, I don't have the energy to tell you, but here's a really good article that was written. And if you read that, that will help you help me. And
Yeah.
it's so heartfelt and good because it says things like, when you tell me I'm strong, it makes me feel blah, blah, blah. And it explains all those things.
Mhm.
And when I can't bring that person up or when I can't talk about it, and I understand what this listener is saying is we withdraw because the fear that if we put ourselves out there and they don't answer right, we don't want to dislike our family or our close friends. That's like someone telling me they just got off of Facebook during all of, the politics and COVID, because she said, I don't want to hate people that I like.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
It kind of reminded me of that. Like, I don't want you to disappoint me or hurt me. And so therefore I don't tell you. But again, I do think that there is some level of truth to what she said at the very beginning about not being able to relate,
Mhm.
that really where she's going to find the most support. I don't know if it's female, but he or she's going to find the most support is probably in someone outside of that close friend and family circle who's walked the road, that gets it, that is sitting in a support group with her or in these conversations. Because they can, people who haven't had a child die can still be heartfelt, caring, compassionate people who are good listeners and we feel supported by. Because I've never had my spouse die, and I think that I've supported a lot of people through that.
Mhm.
But it's different because this is my life's work, right? But I don't want to rule them out completely that they can't support, but I do think there is something in that can't relate part, is that they can't. The other
Well, we
part.
were talking about that just in so I'm doing a virtual support group
Mhm.
now through Starlight Ministries,
Right.
and it's on Tuesday nights. And if you still want to be a part of it, you absolutely could contact Stephanie. So you can go Stephanie@starlightmin.org and try to still be a part of the group. But it was great because we were talking about some of those very points just yesterday about how when our family members come up, they still don't get it. They still don't quite understand that every aspect of my life is affected by this death. Every single
Right.
thing. I can't go to the grocery store. I can't go out to a restaurant. I can't do anything without the grief being there with me. And other family members that we have who say lost now, instead of their son, lost their nephew. Okay, it's probably hard to do family gatherings. It's hard to do certain things, but there are a lot of parts of their life that Andy would never come to their mind, right? If you're at work and you're not thinking about your extended family, you're not thinking about even your grandchildren. It's not like every single moment of the day. So I think that's a part of what is going on there with this question too, is that those family members don't understand the depth of it, and about how there isn't even a moment that you like forget about it. Or if you do have a quick moment where you forget about it, it lasts like 3 or 4 minutes. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I was smiling. I was laughing. What was I doing? And then you end up feeling guilt over that too, especially in the beginning.
Yeah. And something else is that the work that we have to do as bereaved people, one of them that doesn't take a whole lot is just to model how you want to be treated or how you want to communicate. So when you have a thought, express it. And then just say, I'm just putting it out there. I'm just expressing it, or talking about your person, those kinds of things, or this is hard for me, and just stating it in that open communication, which is hard for some families because maybe they don't have that open communication. What was the last part of her question again? I want to make sure.
It was, do you have suggestions of how I can share my grief with close family without putting the burden on myself or causing extra pain?
Yeah. So that it doesn't have to be a long family powwow of here emotionally how I feel, and laying it all out there. But I do think those moments of modeling in little spurts help with the theme overall, that this is just
well, one thing that I want to bring up too just comes back from my guest last week. So last week I had Archie and Alina. So Alina was Garrett's sister, and she has been doing something that I think is really good, and that she's going off to college, a new college. She moved across the country, and so no one knows about Garrett. And so they ask questions like, how many brothers and sisters do you have, or whatever, asking about the family. And she will preface it with, I know this is not what you expected, and we don't have to go on and talk more about it, but my brother died last year in a car accident. Right. Yeah. So even I think for her to say something like that, I know that you don't expect that this is hurting me, but it still is. And I don't expect you to fix it. You can't, but I am going to say it. So, and I do think prefacing some of that with, I'm not expecting you to do anything different. I'm not expecting you to be able to understand this, but understand me. Understand the fact that every single thing does hurt with me right now.
Right.
And I think it's nice if you give them permission to not fix it. Because if they feel like, if you do have a moment where you kind of dump all of it there, they do get this, oh my gosh, we better put her on the prayer list at least,
right. Yeah, exactly. So I had two other thoughts with that. And one is, going back to that, the people who really are alone, is what happens is then we do isolate ourselves, and then we are really hurting ourselves. So, I just want to make sure that, there are times that we do isolate from certain people because they aren't the people that we can trust, or they're not our listeners, or there for us. We just want to make sure we're not isolating from everyone, because that's where the problems come in. But the other thing is that when you reread the question, reminds me of a poem that I oftentimes read at Christmas, but it talks about, being left in a room alone with an elephant. And we all know that expression of the elephant in the room. It's like, if we can't talk about their life, then we can't talk about their death. If it's always something we're skirting around, and again, we don't need a big drawn out emotional family powwow, but if we can at least say their name, I mean, sometimes just the value of support that someone else can speak their name is really supportive, to say, hey, I was,
no question. I mean, that is so incredibly huge when something out of the blue happens like that. I just had that happen not too long ago, that someone brought up Andy, and it just was so beautiful. It was so nice to have somebody share something about my son that they were missing. And I just had Andy's old best friend apparently just had a moment in school where he was just really sad. And he said, and his mom wrote, that he just tries not to think about it, but if he really does think about it, he's just so sad. And of course, then they excuse him from class, go get yourself together, which made me sad too, because I felt like, oh shoot. And now he just has to like go out and walk in the hallway for 5 minutes and like get your head around this and forget about it, so we can get back to your day. It's just sad. Just so sad.
It is so hard because, we don't want to make it seem like now he can't do that again, because the response was one where he was, removed from class or whatever happened. It's like really hard to know how to just let people be in what they're feeling and experiencing at that moment without, and what I tell people, like if I see someone having a tough time in the middle of something, just come back to us when you can. You're fine. Just take all the time you need, but then come back to us when we can. So then they can decide when they want to rejoin, and rather than stopping the whole thing and waiting, for someone to come back in and,
Well, and I love even the thing that they do at Starlight, which at Starlight, you had there Kleenex everywhere in the Starlight support room, but you are not to ever hand someone a Kleenex.
Yep.
They're everywhere, so you can grab them yourself. But when you hand someone a Kleenex, it is sort of like saying, get yourself together, put it together.
Right. I use that all the time.
You had your sad moment, but here you go. Take that Kleenex, get rid of the tears. Let's get back.
Yeah. I never hand anyone a Kleenex. And when they're with me, like I've said, it flows, but that's that grief coming out. And when they're done, they will wrap it up and blow their nose or do what they have to. And most of the time when they leave, they go, wow, thanks for today. I really feel much better, because there's room inside of them for something other than that ugliness, but we didn't stop it by trying to tidy it up or clean it up.
And that's what people do. That's exactly what people do. You just you hand them the Kleenex, and it feels like that's the right thing to do. It feels like, oh, I'm understanding your pain.
Yeah.
Let's hand you a Kleenex. But it really does give you that image of, I accepted it and it was nice, but wrap it up now.
Right, exactly. Well, I say the same thing in working with teens, like that whole group hug or let's go over and hug them. Sometimes when people are hurting, that hug just kind of says that same thing, like, oh, the hug, I'm not against hugs, but you have to let people have that emotion before we, contain them in this, pull it together kind of hug.
Well, and I think hugs can be great too, but when I got hugs from people I didn't really know, I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not offensive. I mean, I don't want to be offensive to you that I don't want to hug you right now, but I don't want to hug you right now.
Right. It
feels too personal, and I can't let you in there at this moment.
Exactly. And this is my, I don't have a word for it, but that grief space. This is my holy space.
Right. And if I want to welcome you into that space, okay. But if I'm not feeling like I want to welcome you in that space, then please acknowledge that too. Right. And be okay with that.
That's kind of what we talk about when training people, is like, don't walk into someone else's house wearing dirty boots when you go in with your own stuff, and your own pain. And then you've left your stuff there too. That's not good. People are probably afraid right now, like, where does support look like? It's really a beautiful thing, and it's not that hard to do. I mean, if someone's listening as someone who like, oh, am I going to screw that up? Or I've done things bad. People know your motive. And, we've talked about this before, when it's done in love or they don't we know they don't know what they're doing. There is a lot of grace and forgiveness in that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But in that reaction, if we go back to what I was saying about reacting, the feelings are usually negative. It's hard to have grace in that. But when it's, you feel a little bit more positive, there's room for some forgiveness and grace in that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just so important to.
Yeah. I guess I want to go back and explain that a little bit better. So in reaction, if someone walks away from you and turns their back, it's hard to forgive that. Like that doesn't feel right. But if someone responded, even if they responded in a way that wasn't necessarily helpful, but they at least took the energy to respond and you knew that they were trying, there's a whole lot more forgiveness and grace in that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. It is better than when people say the wrong thing than when they say nothing.
Right. Well,
when they say nothing, it hurts. And it feels like you have been ignored and that you think then that my pain doesn't matter to you.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. I'm doing a goal setting course right now, and I kind of like that kind of stuff, but it's between average and excellence. And then the frequency line is between inconsistent and consistent. And, obviously we always want to be excellent and consistent, but that's not reality. Like we can't keep that momentum up all the time. So really where we really want to be is more in that practice zone of, average, right? So, we don't have to, we're not expecting perfection in this,
right?
Just,
But I would rather be inconsistently excellent than consistently, terrible. So,
right. Exactly. Yes. That is exactly. Yeah. I forget what the comment was yesterday, but it was kind of along those lines.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or consistently average is better than inconsistently excellent, but someone who's there for you, they might not, again, be like super skilled, but they're consistently checking on you and sending you those text messages and, those people who are really, that means a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I do want to go back to talk about the different types of people that you have around you and that you need when you're grieving, because I feel like that happened to me so significantly that I had, my friend Michelle, who's been on the show and is a dear close friend. She was definitely a doer for me. And she, when we needed a spokesman with the media, that was her. When it was a go-between with the police department, it was her. When it was lining up meals for me, that was her. Getting my house clean, all of that kind of doing stuff. She did great with that. She was excellent with that, and that was her skill. And that's what I turned to her for. But she wasn't the person that I ended up turning to when I just needed to go on a walk and be sad, right? She's listening. There she is. She just did a little heart. So anyway, that was her role for me, but I didn't make her do everything, right? She did a lot of that. And there was somebody else that I would go on a walk with and just be sad. And then that could be their role for me. Right. And there was yet another person I can think of that would do some errands for me and grab me things when they were out at Costco or something like that. So so I had different people for different jobs and what I needed from them. And you did discover who really was good at something and that's just what their blessing was. And then also to allow them to do that. So, Michelle just sent me a little message, a little heart, because I mean, it was really her. It felt to me at the time like I was burdening her in a tremendous way. Like she had put her life and her whole family pretty much on hold to try to support me and be with me. But I know now that she was honored to do that for me, right? That for her to be able to do that stuff felt like she didn't feel so lost because I let her do some of those things. And if you let people in a specific role like that, it will only bless them.
Right. Right. Well, and that's the value of community, right? So I'm thinking of a woman at our church right now who needs help, and she needs a wheelchair ramp. And so some people gave financially to it, right? That's their role. Some people are going to build it, but then some people are making the meals for her kids. And then other people are sitting in the hospital with her, helping her emotionally. That's a team. That's a community.
That's a team.
But what I wrote this down as you were talking, because one of the things that I find sometimes we dump all of our stuff
Everything
on one person.
I know.
And then that makes them just go away when we need them the most. Like they just get overwhelmed. Yeah. Well, we don't want them to like dread when they see our number, and, so be careful. I mean, spread it out and look at that. Who can I ask to do these things for me kind of thing?
Right. And it might feel weird, but I think it's good too to even be really honest and open and ask people what they might like to do, because you can say to them, I don't want to put everything on you.
Right.
What do you think you can do that is the best for you and that helps you the most? And I know the response from the majority of people are going to say, whatever you need. Right. I will be there, whatever you need. No. But we don't want them to say that. We do not want them to say whatever you need. I mean, it's just like I talk to different therapists. Different therapists are good at different types of things, right? Like, so the therapist that I saw is fantastic at seeing grieving moms, and she does pretty much all grieving moms, and she's unbelievable. You've met Nancy. Yes, she's fantastic.
She's wonderful.
But I don't send her, this anxious teenager or somebody with obsessive compulsive disorder or all these types of things, because that's not what she's good at. So sometimes I would meet a new therapist and I would say, what are you good at? What do you really like doing and caring for? And if you get the response back of, oh, I'll just do anything. It's like, but I know you're not good at everything.
Right.
You're not. Yeah. So what are you good at and what fills you? And so to talk to even those people that love us, what fills them up when they are helping us? Because there are probably some things that fill them up and some things that feel draining. Like I recently have a friend of mine who lost her son, and I told her straight away, I am not going to be the one making meals for you. But if you need someone to talk to at 3:00 in the morning, I'm your girl.
Right.
You call me. And so anyway, it's just like knowing what different people are doing.
It is. And, as you're saying that, I'm like, we're doing that in my family right now because my mom's caregiving 100% for my dad. Now, my brother's role is he helps with the finances, the Ring doorbell, the Google, he's the TV remote control question guy, right? My sister does the hearing aids, the medicines, lines them all up, makes her doctor's appointments. But I live far away. So it's like, what is my role? Well, I'm the emotional support. And my mom does not see because she has macular. And so I read the menus, where they live, sends them to me. We each have our role. So that's a team. But what I wanted to say is some days I get burnt out from being the emotional support because it's every day. And I have to say to my siblings, tag, you're it today with that. Or my mom needed a big purchase and my brother said to my sister, I'm going to need you to do this one.
Right.
So,
right.
Again, that tag teaming, it's a communication. And in that honesty, there's a whole lot of grace and forgiveness rather than letting that resentment build up and not being honest and talking about it. And I actually had an honest conversation with my mom too about the time of day that she likes me to call, or that we were getting in the habit. They're a different time zone. It was 9:00 at night, my time. When your feet are up and you feel like you've checked out for the day, I didn't have the energy. And I finally said to her, Mom, I'm realizing that at night I'm dreading your calls, and I don't dread them in the morning or the afternoon. So let's go back to that. And she's like, oh, okay.
Well,
But I could have
good.
let that just build up.
Well, and I like the team thing too. I feel like my friends certainly, I think they had a group text going without me in it,
Mhm.
just to kind of so that they would all be sort of doing something. So
Yeah,
that's nice. So
it
I
is.
had somebody else write in too just now. Devin, Michael, I have a difficult time with people who send a text or message that says thinking of you, or a little heart. But when you answer back within a minute, it's radio silent. That says to me that person is not thinking of me. It's checking a box so they feel
Right.
good. If they were really, truly thinking of me when I responded,
Mhm.
there would be a conversation.
Yes, exactly. And I tell people when I'm training them, bereaved people can sniff that out like none other, just like your listener said. They already know. Like, I know that this is just a box for you. We have to be sincere in our offer and not just make it be a blanket. Oh, every once in a while, I'm going to send you this heart.
Yeah.
That's nothing. That's like, if it's
Yeah.
not followed up with what I need from you or something. So I get that. That is really hard. So they stated it, but they weren't,
I don't
I'm
know that
what
there's
am I
really a
doing it?
question.
Yeah,
Actually, I think
right.
more of a comment.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
I get that because I tell people that's like being at the coat rack at church and someone seeing you and them going, "Oh, how are you today? Good, good, good. I'm praying for you," as they keep putting on their coat and keep walking.
Mhm. Mhm. I I hate it when people say, "How are you doing? You look good."
Mm, yeah.
They didn't even have a pause between the question mark and the telling you that you look good.
Mhm.
Like, so what do you say to that? What do
Mhm.
you say? They just expect it. If you say you look good at the end, it's because they don't really want to know how you're doing. They they just want
Yeah.
to like kind of pretend like they do, but then
Mhm.
already give you the answer that you're looking good, so you must be good. And
Right.
it's not really truly
Yeah.
a conversation I want to have
Well,
right now.
and their body language, if they're walking away from you, if they're still in momentum, all those things. Because someone who really just said, "How are you doing?" And by the way, you look good, as they're looking at you and pausing, that's a totally different kind
Mhm.
of thing, right? And that's what's hard about this question or the comment about the text messages. When you drop a heart, what does that really mean? Like it's hard to
Yeah.
interpret that. But then we know what it means because it doesn't mean I want to have a conversation with you and that I really want to know how you're doing. I just wanted you to know that I'm cool enough that I send a
Well,
heart.
and it's such just a common thing that you say, "How are you doing?" And everyone is just supposed to say good,
Mhm.
even when they're really not good. I
Right. That's what
all
I
the
had
time.
to.
I just
Yeah.
it's funny because I'm a pediatrician, and so today I did like the morning walk-in clinic, and I go in and I see the patient, and I walk in, and I say, "How are you doing?" And they all say good, and then
Mhm.
I always say, "Well, no, you're not, or you wouldn't be here." Like
Right.
you are in a sick walk-in clinic. You are sick. You are not
Mhm.
good. But
Mhm.
it just goes to show how it's embedded into these kids when they're 7, 8, 9 years old to
Yeah.
automatically just say good when clearly
Mhm.
they're not.
Right.
I mean, I had
Right.
a woman that I knew she was really sad and going through a hard time. And I sincerely said, "How are you?" And she said, "I'm good." And
Mm.
at that moment, I looked at her and I said, "Liar, how are you?"
Mhm. Yeah,
And then she opened
exactly.
up because then she knew I really wanted to know, because I
Mhm.
wasn't just saying it because to be polite or because
Right.
that's what you say when you greet someone. I really wanted to know.
Yeah. That brings so many things up for me. One is I had one woman who, and I've said this on the air before, but when she said I'm fine, she really had an acronym for fine of what it meant. So she knew I'm really telling you. And the first one with the F word was the F
Yeah.
word. And then she had irritated, all these other things. So when I said I'm fine, she knew what she was really saying. But the other things I've had people say is I'm fine. But now do you really want to know?
Yeah.
And then that gives that, I'll say I'm fine, but if you
Right.
really want to know, stick around and I'll tell you. And I have seen a lot of people do that. Um, but what I do, because I mean, I live and move among bereaved people, and I'm not all their counselors. Some of them, they're my, people I'm on a committee with in the athletic association, or they're here and there, but I want them to know that I sincerely care and want to know. So instead of just saying, how are you? I'll say, what kind of day is it today? Or how is today for you? Because if it's a good day, then I'll let it be a good day. Like that's cool, because, and oftentimes they'll say, today I'm not too bad, but boy, yesterday was their birthday and I had a really tough time. And then it opens up conversation. So I try to be more specific than that blanket, how are you today? I just don't want to be someone flittering around with all of that.
Well, I like how you mentioned that now, because it almost ties back to that very first question we had with that family, that you could be very specific with them and say, today is a really hard day. Tomorrow may be better. Oh, Laura just wrote in, fine also stands for feelings I'm not expressing.
Oh, very
like that.
Good. That is really good.
That is really good. Feelings I'm not expressing. Oh, I love that.
That is perfect. I'm writing it down.
I know. I think I'm going to use that. I do a little write up for the podcast. I think that's going in the write up, Laura, because that's great.
But again,
she says she's heard the other one too.
Yeah.
We're not using that one in the write up. We don't go through the write up.
But I love it because I'm giving you the truth, without having to stuff myself. Like I'm being honest. I put it out there. You just don't know it. Right.
Right.
And it's the same thing. Let's go. If you have someone who is a life sucker, who is in your family, is in your circle, that you can't count on them, but you have a relationship with them. And thank God everyone's got their skill set and they're good at something else, but they're just not good at emotional support or being a good friend.
Yeah.
We don't have to wear a sign that say you suck at being a good friend. We don't have to do that. But I also want to give you permission that you don't have to go overboard on calling them something they're not, or overly complimenting, or being in their space. And I've said this before, but I don't let life suckers suck the life out of me. If they're over here, I go over there. If, we have one in our family, our extended family, if they come into the living room, I go into the kitchen. If they go into the kitchen, I just move. And, they don't even notice because they're so busy sucking the life out of the room. They don't even notice. Right. And it took 5 years till someone said to me, how come you are never stuck with her? And I said, because I made a decision 5 years ago, not to put myself in that spot, but I didn't have to wear a shirt about it. I didn't have to walk into the family, the family thing and say, I'm staying away from you. I didn't have to do that, but I felt so much better because I'd get in the car and be like, didn't have to breathe air very much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is kind of what you have to do. And
it
does feel bad when it's someone that you thought, especially someone that you thought was really going to be there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. If you put it in that context. Yeah. Well, and that's why when I talk about to bereave people, in the guided tour, we talk about relationship pain, because that's a whole additional pain that you have on top of your grief, is that when someone really does hurt you by not being there, and sometimes people state it, like talk about a lack of support. I tell this story about a woman who was neighbors, husband and wife, and then this husband and wife, they went to dinner together, did things, they were always helping each other out. And the one woman's husband died, and she was in the front yard, and I forget what had happened. I think maybe one of the gutter fell off, and she was on the ladder trying to hold it, and she saw the other neighbors pull in, and she heard the door shut and heard them walking over. And the whole time as she's holding up this gutter, she's thinking, oh, they're coming over to help me, right? They see me in need. And that was her expectation. And instead of it being maybe the husband that she thought might come help her on the ladder, it was the wife. And she said, I just want you to know that my husband's not your handyman, and don't be expecting him to help you. He won't be. Yeah, totally. She's like, I am there on that ladder going, are you serious? We have been friends and neighbors and helped each other through everything. And now you are threatened. But she was obviously threatened by her singleness or whatever it was. But that's a relationship pain. She was completely cut out of that relationship.
Oh my
Those
God.
are legitimate things that people have to grieve, right?
Yeah.
But what that woman decided to do was then take that and I'll find other ways to get my needs met. You are not,
Yeah.
to try to go back and say, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That is the end of that.
Yeah. One of the
Somebody just
things-
wrote in a comment too, that Renee wrote, I had a friend say, "You seem better." And I said, "I am doing better." And she said, "Yeah, because you were really pretty out of it for a while."
Thanks. Didn't know.
Thank you for that comment. I guess I was out of it for a while. I lost my daughter. My daughter died. Yeah, you were out of it for a while. I mean, what kind of comment is that?
I know. But what other response? That's what I say. How else did they expect you to be doing? Like,
I know. Like,
my whole
you would be
world's been
doing
turned
great.
upside down. Yeah.
You would have handled
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I probably would say, well, that's one way to describe grief is out of it for a while. Yeah, we are. We're numb. We're wounded.
If you go
mess.
that way, I'm probably going to be out of it forever. Maybe I'm not as obviously out of it to you now, but
Well, at least maybe you're not oozing all over. I mean, that's really what they're saying is you're,
right, I'm sure.
Mhm.
I'm sure.
So I had written down before we even started, like finding support. Keep trying. I mean, for someone who's saying, and don't keep going to the same well. If it's not there, it's not there. Find a different group, find different people. Just keep searching in places where you can find support for yourself. And then sadly enough, we do have to teach. We do have to model. We do have to say, this is what's helpful. Or when you said that really isn't helpful or, so that teaching. But then lastly, what we haven't talked about is treasuring the support that we do have and thanking people. I tell someone, if you are listening to this and you have some friends who got it right, tell them.
Yes.
You got it right. What would be really, I mean, even if we just drop their initials in the comments, or, however their first name, you mentioned Michelle and your other friend, they got it right.
Yeah.
They're
I had a lot of friends get it right.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So to treasure those. And I tell people as you begin to heal, one of the things you can do that makes you feel good is take them out to lunch, buy them a single flower and drop it off and say, I just want you to know that you got it right or that you really helped me. And that makes us feel better as we begin to heal.
Yeah.
So the friend,
and I do like how you said though, as we begin to heal, because I don't want it to seem like I'm taking you out to lunch. Now you have to support me in that same way. Now I'm done. You know, it's a thank you for this ongoing support that you are giving me.
I'm going to go back to the last comment. Thank you for being there when what was the word? I'm a mess right now. Where you were pretty, what was the word?
You were out of it for a while.
Out of it. Yeah. For being there when I was out of it doesn't mean I'm totally out of it, but I'm not as, overwhelmed. But yeah. You're right. I mean, we are never fully healed, but in our healing, we can look in different perspectives, right? We can see things that we couldn't see before. We can see people who were there for us in a way. And maybe there's people listening today who started it thinking, I don't have a lot of support. But after hearing this, you realize that you really do.
Yeah.
That you have
a little better than you think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Gwen. We are really running out of time, so I better wrap it up. But that was wonderful. And I like being able to have this with you, kind of our normal podcast, but then just having people be able to kind of pipe in next month. Well, actually, probably in November. So about a month and a half from now, we're going to be doing one right before Christmas and Thanksgiving. So I think that will be good.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks.
You. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.